Hey fellow gamers, Chatty Sisa here. I played through the Expanse, a Telltale series last year, shortly after it wrapped up its episodic release. And while it may not be the newest title out there anymore, it released in 2023, it still might be worth checking out, especially if you enjoy story-driven sci-fi games with real consequences to your choices. So let's take a closer look at what this narrative-focused game does well, where it stumbles a bit, and whether it's the kind of experience that deserves a spot on your playlist. The Expanse was developed by Deck 9 and published by Telltale Games, best known for narrative-heavy adventures like The Walking Dead and The Wolf Among Us. This series is set before the events of the Expanse TV show and follows Kamina Drummer, a character I personally didn't know that much about going in, since I've only seen a bit of the show myself, and that already a few years back. The good news is, you don't have to be a hardcore fan to follow the story or get into the world. The game stands well enough on its own, especially thanks to strong writing and some excellent voice work from Kara G, who returns to play drummer here as well. That said, this isn't a combat-heavy action RPG. The focus is almost entirely on narrative decisions, character interactions, and light exploration. If anything, it leans more toward a modern point-and-click adventure with some floating in space navigation and the occasional quick-time event. But what really sets it apart is how much your decisions can shift the story. Not just a line here or there, but entire scenes, outcomes, and relationships. The game takes place before the events of the show and follows Drummer as she becomes XO of the scavenger ship Artemis, working under a rather, let's say, ambitious captain named Cox. What starts as a routine salvage mission quickly spirals into something much darker, complete with mutiny, survival, and choices that genuinely affect who lives, who dies, and who wants to space you out the nearest airlock. Set in the 24th century, the crew of the ship Artemis is trying to get their hands on a very valuable salvage that would make them unbelievably rich. The problem is that this particular piece of salvage has a significant importance also for other, much more dangerous parties, from pirates to high-ranking Martians, Earthers, and even Belters. Without spoiling too much, I can only say that you will have to decide in the end how to deal with this piece of salvage once you get your hands on it, and it won't be an easy choice. Through it all, one of the episodes will give you more insight into Drummer's background, which might be interesting for fans of the TV series. While the early episodes set up the core conflict and give you time to get used to the crew, the pacing shifts dramatically towards the end. The later chapters are noticeably shorter, likely to increase narrative tension, but they sometimes trade meaningful development for filler tasks, like extended walks in Mac boots when we could have been fleshing out our crew dynamics or cutting between different perspectives. The main storyline itself is solid, a tight, engaging survival tale in space that captures the atmosphere of the Expanse really well. But like with many choice-based games, some of the branching dialogue consequences can feel off. You might casually answer a question in episode 2 and then suddenly find yourself blamed for a tragedy in episode 4 based on a wildly overinterpreted sentence. It's a bit like telling someone you enjoy chocolate ice cream and later being accused of saying that you hate vanilla. Still, the game does a good job at making key decisions feel emotionally charged when it matters the most. Even if some consequences come out of nowhere, the overall tension builds nicely, and by the final episode, you'll feel the weight of your actions, whether things went the way you hoped for or not. The main protagonist is, of course, Kamina Drummer, brought to life with a fantastic voice performance by Kara G. She's the player-controlled character throughout the game, and you'll have plenty of chances to shape her personality, whether you lean towards strict professionalism, brutal honesty, or empathetic leadership. The writing and acting here are strong, making it easy to stay invested in her journey. Your crew aboard the Artemis includes Captain Cox, loud, arrogant, and unpredictable. His actions in the early game set several events in motion, and how you deal with him helps shape Drummer's leadership trajectory. Maya Castillo, a recent addition to the crew who initially struggles to find her place. She's also the game's only romance option, but this path feels oddly rushed. The sudden shift from new recruit to "hey, wanna sleep with me" comes out of nowhere without much build-up or emotional grounding. A slower burn or later timing might have made this arc more believable. Virgil, the medic of the crew, is well-meaning but emotionally fragile. Depending on your decisions, he can become one of your strongest allies or spiral in dangerous directions. Khan is the ship's engineer and one of the most pragmatic crew members. Quiet, competent, and level-headed, she often serves as a voice of reason during tense moments. And then there are the Morozov twins. Arlen Morozov is the aggressive, short-tempered older brother who constantly berates Rayan, the younger one, and challenges Drummer's authority. His loyalty depends heavily on how you handle conflict and control aboard the ship. Rayan Morozov is, as mentioned, the younger of the Morozov siblings and is often the target of his brother's criticism, but develops into one of the more emotionally grounded characters, especially if Drummer shows him support. Some characters like Khan and Virgil are written with real nuance and offer rich optional dialogue that helps you connect with them. Others, like Cox and the Morozovs, could have used more depth or screen time to explain their motives and backgrounds more fully, but your choices do influence how each of these relationships evolves, including who sticks with you and who doesn't. The primary antagonist of the game is Toussaint Zapata. She's a ruthless belter pirate whose arrival escalates the conflict in a big way. Zapata is driven, manipulative, and not above using others to reach her goals. Her presence raises the stakes in the later episodes, and while we don't get to spend too much time with her, her actions have major consequences for both Drummer and the crew. The gameplay in The Expanse is relatively light. This is not a traditional RPG with combat systems, inventory management, or character builds. Instead, the focus is almost entirely on narrative exploration, decision-making, and light interaction with the environment. You'll explore various locations, derelict ships, space stations, and your own vessel, mostly in zero gravity, which is one of the more unique elements of the game. Mag boots let you walk along surfaces, while floating segments allow you to move freely in 3 dimensions. It's immersive and it adds to the atmosphere, even though the novelty wears off a bit by the 3rd or 4th 0G section. There are occasional QuickTime events, but they're relatively easy and infrequent, more about keeping up cinematic pacing than testing reflexes. They're functional, but not particularly challenging. And you'll get to solve a couple of puzzles too, so this contributes a bit to the varying activities which are possible within the game. Salvaging is naturally another type of activity that is possible for Drummer, as she explores all the locations and you can get your hands this way on a few very useful items. One of the standout features is how decisions carry weight across episodes. Dialogue options and actions can result in characters living or dying, relationships shifting, or entire scenes playing out very differently. However, some of these choices suffer from vague wording. You think you're answering neutrally, only to find out later that your response was interpreted as something much stronger. That disconnect between intention and impact is one of the more frustrating aspects of the game, especially when outcomes seem to come out of the left field. It's not just the major dialogue choices that shape the crew's fate, though. In the first couple of episodes, especially, your crewmates will sometimes mention small personal requests, offhand comments about gear, keepsakes, or tools they've lost. If you take the time to explore and find these optional items, it can significantly improve your relationship with them and even alter their fate later in the story. But you'll have to go out of your way and really scour every corner, especially in Zero G, if you want to avoid some of the game's darker outcomes. The visuals in The Expanse are surprisingly immersive for a smaller, narrative-focused title. The space environments look great, especially in Zero G. Floating debris, shipwrecks, and planetary backdrops do a lot to sell the setting. The lighting deserves a special mention too, with nice use of shadows and glow effects during tense moments or emergencies. Facial animations are decent, and while it's not high-end AAA material, the game looks clean and consistent throughout. Voice acting is excellent across the board, with Karaji's performance as drummer being the highlight. As for the music, it's there. Nothing particularly memorable, but it serves its purpose and never gets in the way. And then there are two things which I would call the little quirks in this game. The first one is the replayability. Technically, yes, you can replay the game to see how things might have turned out differently based on your choices. But unless you're really invested in the characters, it's probably not worth dragging yourself through all the slower sections and filler content again. You'll get a few alternate scenes or endings, but the path to reach them doesn't change that much. If you're just curious, a quick online search might save you a few hours of backtracking. The second quirk would be the bonus episode, the sixth one, which is called Archangel. This is a standalone chapter, and it puts you in the shoes of Christian Avasarala in a dialogue-heavy political mini-story set on Earth. There's no exploration or action, just a single office location and a lot of diplomacy. While the writing is solid and the performance is very strong, it's very different in tone and gameplay from the main series. It's more of a political point-and-click novella than a continuation of the sci-fi survival story. Not everyone will enjoy it, and it's definitely not essential to the main plot. The Expanse, a Telltale series, offers an engaging, well-written sci-fi story with solid voice acting, immersive space environments, and a protagonist you can actually shape through your choices. It's not an action RPG, and it doesn't try to be. It's a narrative-driven experience, more comparable to a story-rich adventure game with a bit of zero-G exploration. Some characters are compelling, while others feel underdeveloped. The pacing stumbles with a few too many filler tasks that could have been replaced with character development or story progression. And while your choices matter, the vagueness of certain dialogue options can lead to some confusing consequences down the line. At the time of this review, the game is available as a bundle on Steam for some €29, including all 5 core episodes plus the bonus Archangel chapter. The approximate time to beat the game is somewhere between 5 and 8.5 hours, depending on how much of a completionist you are. If you're a fan of the franchise, or if you're specifically looking for a slower-paced sci-fi story with meaningful dialogue choices and almost zero combat, then The Expanse might be worth a shot, especially during a sale. But if you're expecting action, fast pacing, or deep gameplay systems, this one probably won't hit the mark. I'd love to know in the comment section below what you thought about the game in case you have already played it. Did the story grip you, or did some of the choices leave you scratching your head? I would really love to hear your feedback and your take on this slow burn space drama. Thank you very much for watching, stay tuned and game on!